NBA rivals suck, and it's no secret. It's kinda odd. The NFL has the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears, the Cowboys versus Washington, and the Steelers versus the Ravens. The MLB has the Dodgers versus Giants, the Red Sox versus Yankees, and Cubs versus Cardinals. Soccer has Barcelona versus Real Madrid, and Liverpool versus Manchester United. Heck, even college basketball has rivalries like Duke versus North Carolina and Indiana versus Purdue. But in the NBA, the only rivalry you could argue for is the Celtics versus Lakers, or even Zion Williamson versus actually playing games. But the Celtics versus Lakers has particularly been dead since Magic and Bird retired 35 years ago. Well, except during this 3-year stretch. It seems like rivalries are the heart and soul of sports, but for some weird reason, it just isn't the case in the NBA. But why is this though? Why hasn't the NBA managed to develop rivalries like their competitors have in other sports? And how can the NBA implement rivalries to revive the culture of the sport? The NBA is one of the youngest professional sports leagues in the world. The NFL was founded in 1920, the NHL was founded in 1917, the MLB was founded in 1876, and the Premier League, or the Football Association, which it was called back then, was founded all the way back in 1863. All of these professional sports leagues are all over 100 years old, some even 150 plus years old. But the NBA was founded in 1946, making it only 77 years old. And it's no secret the NBA has a lot less history than all these other sports leagues. I apologize if any of these other sports comparisons are a little off in advance. As you can probably tell, basketball is really my expertise over here. But anyways, the Red Sox and Yankees have both been in the MLB for about 120 years at this point. These teams have played each other 2,324 times. That's insane. The Packers and Bears have battled against each other for the NFC North title for 10.5 decades. They played against each other 206 times. Doesn't sound like a lot, but considering they only play each other twice a year, that's a lot considering baseball teams play each other more often than ESPN talks about Victor Wembanyama being the future messiah of basketball. I mean, seriously, hop off this man's meat. Anyways, Barcelona has played Real Madrid almost 300 times over their long history. My point is that the NBA hasn't had the same time frame as these other leagues to develop rivalries. But when you really put it into perspective, this reason is about the smallest portion of the pie as to why NBA rivalries suck. This reason is just the tip of the iceberg. The second reason, and honestly in my opinion, by far the biggest reason why NBA rivalries aren't as prevalent, is the format of the division and conferences. Winning your division in the NBA is about as relevant as Chris Paul's playoff success. It's less valuable than Kevin Durant's 2 rings with the Warriors when you try to argue he's a top 10 player of all time to anyone over the age of 40. Winning your division in the NBA literally grants you no postseason advantage, which kind of defeats the point of divisions in my opinion. All that matters is your standing in the conference. Well, at least you get a banner in your arena, and I guess a trophy, so something. Not only do your divisions not mean shit in the NBA, but also 8 of the 15 teams in your conference make the playoffs. That's 16 of the 30 teams league-wide. That's more than half the league. This format is completely different than any other sports league. It kills any chance of any rivalries happening because it pretty much makes the regular season worth nothing. It makes games you play against your divisional teams like playing any other team in the league. The format of the MLB and NFL encourages rivalries because the playoff format rewards division-winning teams by giving them a guaranteed playoff series and home field advantage. Not only this, but the MLB and NFL only allow division-winning teams and 2 wildcard teams into the playoffs. The playoffs for the MLB and NFL are more exclusive, which makes teams in the regular season play harder and more passionate. The importance of winning your division makes playing those certain teams so much more important. It's kind of funny. The NBA allows more than half the league into the playoffs, and people complain about the regular season being boring. Soccer also makes rivalries more intense and passionate because the winner of each conference or division, or whatever they call it in soccer, is based on points and not purely your record. And I guess playing your rivalry team is more important because you can stop them from getting points and even contribute to kicking them down a league. Soccer fans, if there's any here, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could see how this could fuel rivalries. Like, imagine if this was a thing in the NBA. the Spurs would get kicked down to the G League? That would be funny. My overall point here is that the structure of the playoffs in the NBA is literally the worst format at attracting rivalries, and other leagues have a way better format to encourage them. The third reason why NBA rivalries are more non-existent than the Celtics in elimination games is because the NBA is more player-focused. It's pretty obvious that the NBA is more of a players' league than a teams' league, and it's honestly part of the nature of the game. Basketball is a really rare sport where one player can have an unimaginable influence on the results of the game. It's not the same with other sports. Baseball, your most dominant position is your starting pitcher, which can only influence about 50% of the game on a good day. Field players can only influence 1/9 of the game on offense. In football, your most dominant position is your quarterback, who pretty much contributes the same as the pitcher, about 50% at best. But a basketball player can literally do everything on the court. 2018 LeBron James is a prime example of this. I feel bad for the man, honestly. His back still probably hurts to this day from all that carrying. Not only just this, but the rules of the league's CBA or collective bargaining agreement, so pretty much the rules of the NBA, give individual players far more freedom in their ability to move to different teams with free agency and their power as individuals. This is why the NBA has a super team issue that practically no other league has. It's pretty much just like AAU for grown men. And finally, I would like to argue that the NBA actively goes out of their way to promote and advertise their star individuals to the world more than any other league. Now, because of all this individualism in the NBA, it causes a big problem with forming long-lasting rivalries. These players are moving to different teams like it's nothing. Because of player empowerment in the NBA, players choose to leave their teams more often. I would argue that baseball has a similar situation though. This causes a lack of continuity of the roster, which kind of makes rivalries hard to last. I'll give you two examples of this. The Thunder versus Warriors was starting to become a pretty good rivalry in the mid-2010s. Both teams were at the top of the West and had played each other in the playoffs. And then KD had to ruin it by joining the Warriors. Even the Raptors versus 76ers or Bucks was starting to become a good rivalry. But then Kawhi just dipped out of Toronto and it slowly started to fade away. In other sports, the rivalries are pretty much ingrained into the culture of the sport. It's not like that for NBA basketball. The last point I want to talk about with individual players is how friendly they are with each other. I mean, I swear to God, you would think Joel Embiid and Al Horford were going out for drinks after playing each other in the conference semifinals or something. NBA players just don't despise each other like other sports. Part of this is to blame on the point I made earlier, where players move around more often, so they never know if they'll be teammates with each other at one point. Playing with each other in Team USA doesn't help that much either. And finally, young and upcoming NBA stars are already playing against other future stars in big AAU tournaments as young as 12 or even like 13. So by the time they're in the league with each other, they're already buddy-buddy with each other. Okay, real quick, before we get into the solutions, there's two more smaller reasons why NBA rivalries just aren't the same as other leagues. First off, the NBA, or just basketball in general, is so much more appealing to the casual watcher than other professional sports. I mean, really think about it. There's less players in each team, less players playing at once, less positions and strategies to learn. I mean, all the NBA now is just drive and kick, pick and roll, or isolation. Try explaining what offsides is to a casual watcher of soccer, or try explaining what an infield fly is to a casual person watching baseball. Basketball is just easier for the common fan to watch and understand quickly than other sports. And having a larger portion of casual fans than other sports is a problem to developing rivalries, because these casual fans simply don't care about rivalries or the history of each other's teams. All they want to see is Giannis dunk the ball and Steph Curry hit deep threes. The second smaller reason is a cultural thing. It just seems like NBA teams are less associated with their regions like other sports and teams are. For example, if you were to ask anyone in Dallas what sports team represents them, I know for sure they're not saying the Mavericks. They're going to say the Cowboys. If you're asking someone the same question, let's say in Philadelphia, they're going to say the Eagles, not the 76ers. It's even more apparent in soccer. Like, you literally have different parts of England and Wales legitimately beefing over the fact that their soccer teams are rivals. Like, average Joes just won't like each other for this one reason. The NBA is nowhere near that level. Even the NFL, you can somewhat see this concept. I guess there's a couple of really old NBA teams you could say this for, like the Celtics, Knicks, or Lakers, but that's about it. And piggybacking on this idea, NBA teams relocate themselves to different cities so much more than other sports teams do. Like, imagine how much chaos there would be if the Cowboys randomly moved to somewhere like Las Vegas. God forbid if someone like Manchester United moved to a different city. Can't imagine what the knife violence in UK would be like after that. Now we've thoroughly established that NBA rivals suck at this point, but how can we fix them? The first big change we need to see happen is a complete reform of the structure of the regular season and playoff games. The NBA would need to decrease the amount of teams that make the playoffs. I'm thinking you lower it to 5 instead of 8 for each conference. The NBA would need to reward divisional winners the same way they do with the MLB and NFL, where they get a guaranteed playoff series on their home court. So this means that 3 divisional winners and 2 wildcard teams make the playoffs. And we need to increase the amount of divisional games that each teams play each other. I mean, MLB teams play teams in their division 52 times out of 162 games. That's 32% of their games. The NFL plays 6 of 16 in their division. That's 37% of games. The NBA only plays 16 of 82 games in their division. Only 19% of games. I would say raise this to 6 games per season against division opponents, rather than just 4, what it is now, and decrease the amount of interconference games played. The second big change, I think, is less player empowerment. The NBA would have to change free agency and trading rules that benefit the teams more and keep players around for longer naturally. I think a good start to this would be that NBA players would have to finish out their contracts with their existing team before requesting a trade. I think that would keep players on their same teams and make them think longer and harder about signing contracts. Then we could finally see some of these pretty underdeveloped rivalries really start to blossom out. And finally, the hardest and least straightforward change to implement, we would need to see a cultural and social change with basketball. We would need more passionate fans of their teams and hatred towards their neighboring teams, which I think would be a result of these first 2 changes. If all of these 3 changes started to happen, I think we would start to see rivalries be a much more prevalent thing in the NBA. But let me know in the comments your guys' opinion on NBA rivalries and what we could do to make them better.